Every morning, members of the Dáil say a prayer known as the Dáil Prayer. Up to now, participation in this has not been obligatory, but a motion to require everyone to stand during this prayer is due to be voted on after Easter. Atheist Ireland is asking people to write to their local TDs, asking them to stop forcing parliamentarians to pray to Christ our Lord. Joining us on the line to discuss this is John Hamill from Atheist Ireland. John, how are you today?
I'm very well, Niall. It's good to be talking with you.
John, tell me, why are Atheist Ireland calling for the Dáil Prayer to be abolished?
Because the Dáil is a place that should legislate in the interests of everyone in the country and not be a place where the interests of one particular denomination or sect are given privilege over everyone else. So, for example, there's already in the Dáil lots of people who are not Christians, and it would be a pretty overt breach of their human rights in order to, if they were to be Ceann Comhairle, in order to ask them to read this prayer out twice every day and pray to Christ our Lord, as the prayer says. So, for example, a conscientious atheist couldn't say a prayer to Christ our Lord when they don't believe that there is such a person. So essentially what you're saying is that a conscientious atheist can't become Ceann Comhairle, and I think in a democratic republic that's just not appropriate at all.
And John, do you feel that this is an old tradition that is no longer relevant?
It is an old tradition, yes. It actually comes from Westminster. So if you look around the world at the different parliaments that used to have a daily prayer, they all come from the Westminster tradition. So essentially, countries that are in the Commonwealth or have a background as part of the British Empire. But a lot of those countries have changed that since. And even in Westminster itself, they've changed the process. So the current speaker in Westminster in the House of Commons is John Bercow, who is Jewish. And what they do there is they read out the prayer, but it's read by a chaplain. And the members of the House don't have to be present for that. They can decide whether they want to go in and listen to the prayer or not. And people who are present don't have to stand, as is the proposal here. So even in a country like the UK, where they have an established church, the Established Church of England, their rules are more relaxed than the rules that are being proposed for Ireland.
And tell me, John, how has the Dáil Prayer lasted so long?
Well, I think it's part of a broad set of rules and legislation and law that we have in Ireland that really comes from a historic situation where I think people will be familiar with the history of Dave's Constitution, which was explicitly Catholic at the time, and whereas the country has changed an awful lot since then, lots of our laws have not. So, for example, I think the most obvious and public case that people will be familiar with relates to our education system, where we have an education system that's almost entirely funded by the state, but is almost entirely run by the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has exemptions for from our equality laws to allow them to discriminate against pupils and to discriminate against teachers based on religion. But there's lots of other laws that we have that come from this historical background, whereby they just haven't caught up with the more diverse and pluralist nature of the country. So, for example, we have different laws at the minute for religious as compared to secular citizens when it comes to marriage. We still have a religious oath for the president. We still have a religious oath for judges. We still have blasphemy laws. So the Dáil Prayer, I think, is just one more in a broad set of examples that you could cite, whereby we have religious laws for a country that really isn't as religious as it used to be. And part of the Atheist Ireland campaign is to change those laws most specifically in our health and education systems, in order to more accurately reflect a human rights-based approach for a pluralist population.
And how have your proposed changes been received by the Dáil?
Well, I think there's a number of different views in the Dáil. So you'll be aware that a number of TDs have objected to the current proposal, but there's a number of others that are in favour of it. So it'll be interesting to see how the vote goes after Easter. Or I suspect that the proposals might be changed actually, but before it comes to a vote. But I think there's a broad set of opinions in the Dáil. Some people are devout and pious Catholics, and that's absolutely fine. And I think it's important to point out that nobody's trying to infringe on their rights or to stop them saying prayers to the Catholic deity that they believe in. So if there's a pious Catholic TD who wishes to say a prayer before the Dáil starts, I think they should be absolutely welcome to do so. But they shouldn't seek to impose that prayer on everyone else and create rules that force other non-Catholics to say the Catholic prayers.
So you're saying follow the British Parliament's method of saying the prayer. It's voluntary and it's said by a chaplain. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I think the British are in a slightly different position in that they have an established church. So because of the established church, they have a number of attendant rules that are associated with that. So, for example, their head of state is also the head of the Church of England. There are bishops who get seats in the House of Lords. So I wouldn't be in favour of following everything that the Westminster Parliament does. But one of the proposals was to have a 30-second moment of reflection at the start of the Dáil day when Catholics can say Catholic prayers and non-Catholics can say other prayers, and secular TDs can reflect on the day ahead and the ethics that are going to inform their decisions. And that seems like a pretty good idea to me. Now, I guess the other argument that you frequently hear from some TDs of a more conservative bent is that I'm sure you've heard the phrase, "this is a Catholic country." And for sure, the recent census has showed that whereas the number of non-religious in Ireland has increased very significantly, there's still a majority of the population who would describe themselves as Catholics. And as I say, that's absolutely fine. Nobody was trying to infringe on their rights at all. But just because a majority of the country are Roman Catholics, I don't think that means it's a Catholic country. So, for example, in the 70s, we removed the provision in the Constitution that gives a special place to the Roman Catholic Church. But even without that, I think people will be familiar with the famous quotations from Wolfe Tone, who said he wanted to get rid of labels like Protestant, Catholic and Dissenter and replace those by just talking about Irish people. And I think everyone can understand that and the alternative approach, which is to say this is a country for Catholics and everyone else can take a Roman jump. I don't think there would be broad support for that kind of approach, not least because on this island we know a little something about what sectarian majoritarianism looks like. A few miles up the road from me in the north of this country, we've had several generations of sectarian majoritarianism, and it didn't really work out very well.
Of course. And if this is abolished, do you feel that this is a step in the right direction for Ireland to become a multicultural society?
I do indeed, and I think actually it already is a multicultural and pluralist society. And the most of the problems that we come across at the minute in these kind of areas relate to the law being behind the population. So I think whereas we have laws that would imply this should be a Catholic country for a Catholic people, and laws that would imply that, I guess the old phrase, it was home rule is Rome rule. So some of our laws imply that we do have Rome rule here. But I think the population has moved beyond that quite substantially, and really the problem that we have at the minute is encouraging our legislators to allow the statute book to catch up with where the population is.
And John, have you had much support from the public in this?
We have indeed. We get a lot of feedback through social media channels and through responses to articles that are published in the paper and discussions not like this one that we're having at the minute now. So I think that the response is overwhelmingly positive, and it only takes a moment of reflection to understand what's being suggested in the Dáil. So, it's an explicitly Christian and Catholic proposition that we're being presented with. And if you look at what the Christian story is, essentially what we're suggesting is that in order to be an effective Dáil deputy, what you have to do is you have to believe that the universe was created by an invisible character called Yahweh, who had a son who was a Palestinian carpenter living 2,000 years ago, and that's how we should inform our ethics today. And I think most people can see that whereas if Christians want to believe that, that's perfectly fine, but it's also perfectly possible for others to have a non-Christian perspective on life and also be entirely ethical and moral, and derive their ethics and their sense of justice from other places.
And John, before we finish up, and thank you for your time, have you anything else to add?
No, just that if people are interested in the campaign, they can take a look at atheist.ie. The organisation has a number of different categories of membership. So we have a number of fully paid up members who come to our AGM and vote in our policy positions. And we also have a number of associates or online supporters who number several thousand. So if you're interested to take a look at the campaign on the standing orders in the Oireachtas, or some of the other laws that we're campaigning to change in Ireland today, then please take a look at those. And what you'll find is that we're not campaigning for an atheist state. So Atheist Ireland would be just as opposed to laws that promote atheism as we are to laws that promote Catholicism. So whereas lots of different citizens can believe in various different gods or none, we don't believe it's the job of the state to take sides. So the state should be entirely neutral as to which gods, if any, exist. And that's something that each individual citizen can decide for themselves.
Well, John Hamill from Atheist Ireland, thank you very much for coming on Wired In today.
Thanks, Niall.